Have you got trouble with the guy you've got a crush on? Is he just not making a move? Then maybe a zombie boyfriend is the right choice for you. Today we discuss a quirky horror comedy set in 1989 by the name of Lisa Frankenstein. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter and my undead co-host for this episode is Tim.
It'd be so easy just to not say anything the whole episode.
Yes, you're not getting that easy a night, Tim. I'm sorry to say. You're going to have to be funny and entertain the audience.
Why start now?
Welcome everyone. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie we watched. We've got a horror comedy this week and our new release. It's called Lisa Frankenstein. Written by Diablo Cody and directed by Zelda Williams, the daughter of Robin Williams. Well, at least I'm assuming it is, because I know Robin Williams had a daughter named Zelda, and I'd be highly surprised if someone else named Zelda Williams just popped up out of nowhere. But it's possible, I guess.
It's possible. I'm fairly confident it is that particular Zelda Williams, but
yes,
who knows?
Yes, the Zelda Williams of the Williams family. I suppose the other Zelda Williams would also be of a Williams family.
Hey, I mean, I'll be excited when we get a movie directed by Link De Niro.
And Ganon Pacino.
Yeah.
You're lucky I knew one more Zelda character, because that's the extent of my Zelda knowledge. So
I'm impressed, yeah.
It's gone. Honestly, I'm surprised I even pulled out Ganon.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, I don't know what Ganon looks like. Anyway, this is obviously a Frankenstein-inspired movie, given the title, but it's a horror comedy. We'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. Before we get started, I'll just say that if you're enjoying the show, hit the like button on YouTube. It helps us out a bunch, helps more people find us. And of course, there's a bonus episode you can get every month, as well as some other goodies on Patreon. I'll tell you more about that at the end. So... You always look like you're in pain when I'm plugging at the start, Tim. It's like you can't wait. It's like, come on, get to the conversation. You're more impatient than the audience.
I just like to make faces and see if you're noticing.
Oh, I'm noticing. Don't you worry, I'm noticing. Oh, yes, welcome everyone. So yes, Lisa Frankenstein. Set in 1989. Good year.
It's okay, yeah.
Most important person that's ever lived was born that year, so...
I think you're about...
Are you trying to do the math of how many years the difference it is for you?
No. No, never mind.
Tim, you started a sentence and then just stopped. I tried to fill in and help you. You just abandoned the ship completely. What are you doing here, Tim?
I was just... It took me a second, but I was trying to think of when Jesus was born. So I was like, I was gonna say, oh, that's how late you are.
Tim, you realize you could have just said 1,989 years, give or take.
But I mean, I think that's up for debate, though. You know, some scholars think that it might have been a little earlier than that, or a little.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to be accurate.
You're worried about the accuracy for your dumb joke. You're not even religious, so it's
well, not any religions you've heard of.
Oh, go on then. Name one. What is it?
Well, there's a whole induction ceremony. I'm really not supposed to talk about it until after you've proven your worthiness. But I mean, we can talk after the show. I can give you some pamphlets and you know, get your bank account information, and we can get you started.
Now, are you sure it's a religion, not a cryptocurrency?
I mean, what's the difference at this point?
Okay. Anyway, yes. So it's set in 1989. It is a teenager played by Kathryn Newton by the name of Lisa. Who most horror fans probably remember from Freaky. That's where she was kind of in a big role back in 2020. Still playing high school students, so I guess, you know, we're just... I just love how some actors, they'll play high school students, and then the second they hit 30, that's okay, right, then we have to move on now. We can't keep doing it.
You're a grandma now.
Yeah, she went from high school student to grandma. There's no in between. But yeah, she basically ends up with like an undead boyfriend, I guess. Well, not really. We'll say best friend, an undead best friend who there may be romantic encouragement as the movie goes on.
Hey, you know what? I mean, I shouldn't work for free, but you know, it would have been a good. I'm giving like some free marketing or publicity stuff here, but you know what a good tagline for this movie would have been is it could have been from the dead zone to the friend zone.
I don't know what's more concerning, the quality of that or the legitimate frozen in time smile that you had after you said it, like you just dropped gold.
I think that's pretty good. I'm get in touch with Zelda, see what she thinks.
Well, they've already promoted the movie, Tim. It's a bit late for that now.
That's the problem with publicity.
Maybe we have to do a sequel. You could have a chance.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Lisa Frankenstein 2. Maybe we'll even call it that, from the dead zone to the friend zone. There you go. That's something. Yeah. Anywho, so it's definitely a horror comedy in every sense of the word, and the movie doesn't operate under real world logic. It's quirky. It's got characters that are a bit cartoony at times. It's definitely going for a vibe. There's definitely a creative side to it. So we'll get into things, but I usually just start with a simple question for Tim that he usually blabbers on about for 2 minutes. But Tim, what did you think of Lisa Frankenstein?
I mean, you always get on my case for going too long, but then like when I don't say enough, you always get mad at me for not speaking enough. So you gotta pick a lane, man.
Look, Tim, there's a nice middle ground between yeah, it was all right, or no, wasn't that good, and the essay. It's like sometimes you forget there's going to be a whole show after. You've got a whole show to give all these other thoughts.
Well, I mean, I just like to get my stuff done out of the way and then just kind of coast the rest of the show.
All right, what did you think of Lisa Frankenstein, Tim?
I wasn't super. I wasn't super into it, but I also it's not like the worst thing in the world. I think starting out maybe the first 15-20ish minutes, I really wasn't feeling it. A lot of stuff was feeling kind of like forced to me. It was like, all right, yeah, we're getting the 80s references, and then like I thought the character was just like a little boring. It's just one of those very like, you know, quiet, soft-spoken, like not talking very much, which I mean there's reasons and stuff for it, so it's like I understand why the character is doing that, but and it just made it a little uninteresting to me. But then I mean once the horror stuff kicked in, I would say that I perked up a bit, but I don't think it ever like fully won me over. You know, I do think there are some high points. Like I think, you know, Kathryn Newton was quite good in the role. I think she's pretty charming and funny, and I think I've heard like other people kind of share similar sentiments where yeah, after the movie saying like, oh yeah, like, you know, she was great and stuff. So I enjoyed her. I think especially like as the movie went on, you kind of, you know, see her transformation. And I mean, I wasn't on the floor dying from laughter, but I mean, there were a few moments that I thought like, okay, this isn't bad. I wouldn't say like the...
What are you dying of?
I mean, the show usually does a number on me each week.
If not laughter, what was the cause of death? I mean, these are the big questions that everyone wants to know.
I mean, I'm sure like there are some doctors that are doing some type of study who can figure out like, you know, the way like, oh, like every puff of a cigarette takes off like, you know, 30 minutes of your life. I'm sure every week recording a podcast probably like, you know, takes off at least like half a day or something for me.
Well, I mean, it literally takes off about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how long we go.
Which, hey, you know, that adds up. But yeah, I mean, I understand what they're going for here, which like it kind of felt like, you know, this is trying to be very reminiscent of like, you know, early like Burton movies. Like, you know, I could see like, you know, some Edward Scissorhands, like a little bit of Beetlejuice, kind of the, you know, the mixing of like the, you know, that suburban kind of like, oh, everyone's smiling and happy, and then there's like this dark layer. I kind of get that, and you know, I guess I like that attempt, but it just didn't really feel like it was maybe necessarily doing much with that, other than just kind of having that be like, I guess the aesthetic they were going for. I don't know, but again, it's not a. I'm not like super harsh on it because I don't think it was, you know, the worst watch in the world, but I don't know. I wasn't like crazy about it. I'm curious what you think, because I don't know. I feel like it's not your type of movie, but I don't know. Maybe you'll surprise me.
Oh, a bit of anticipation, is there? Also, Tim, you're getting a reputation for being a negative Nancy. I feel like I can't remember the last time you liked a new movie. You've been sitting there going, and that's the noise you make at the start of every time. Every time I ask, what did you think of the movie, Tim? You're like, once more into the fray.
It's not my fault. I mean, Hollywood needs to get its shit together.
People were quite positive about this, actually. It does have its fan base. There's definitely a lot of people who are like hyped about it on social media and stuff.
I think some people. I think I feel like I've seen mixed reactions. There are definitely people that seem to be quite into it, but it didn't seem like it was like overly like a must see. Like it's definitely not something that united people, and like everyone was like, oh my god, yeah, this is the movie here.
Hold on, I think someone else has left a comment on Prometheus telling us it's actually a good movie. What is wrong with all these people? Prometheus is shit. Anyway,
I also just love that like people don't really understand like necessarily what opinions are.
I know. It's like, you are wrong. Okay, fine, you like the movie. I'm happy for you. But like this is not meant to be a factual scientific discussion proving like something definitively. Anyway.
Actually, if you look at the very scientifically accurate Letterboxd review that I did, you'll see that it's actually quite good.
Oh dear. And Prometheus of all, this is the problem. The review's doing a bit better on YouTube than most episodes, which is great. But the downside to that is that a lot of people who seem to find it are people who love it, even though it's not a good movie. And of course, you know, we brought the truth, Tim, as we always do.
I mean, not you and me.
Not you and me. Me and David, the lesser Tim, who's on the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast with me these days. Anyway,
I mean, if people are going nuts here, I'm excited to see what the Alien Covenant reactions are going to be.
Oh yeah, if you thought I was negative on Prometheus, just you wait. Wait till they get a load of Alien Covenant. Jesus Christ. Right, anyway. My thoughts on Lisa Frankenstein. Well, the first thing I'll say is I agree with something you said in the middle of all that, you know, that 20-minute speech you just gave. There was a sentiment in there that you were a little concerned at the start, because, and I felt that as well. There was a scene early on with her stepsister when they're driving to a party, and every line was falling kind of flat, and I was like, oh no, I might hate this. And I didn't hate it. Like, I guess I'm kind of similar boat to you, maybe slightly more positive, but I would basically describe this movie as, I don't really think it's quite for me, but I do think the performances were pretty good for the most part. I appreciate that Zelda Williams, I think, clearly was being creative. I always felt like there was a director making choices. I do think her handling of a couple of, I'll call them action scenes, and I don't mean they're action scenes like, it's not like a scene from Die Hard, I just mean like where stuff is happening quickly and she has to sort of like handle like how the action's covered. That's the only times I felt the direction was maybe a little lackluster, but generally speaking, when it was slower moving, I found it to be pretty stylish, and it seemed like she knew what she was doing and she was going for something. And I think Kathryn Newton's performance, especially as the movie went on and she didn't have to be as quiet and as timid, where it kind of felt like she was doing like an impression of like a, I don't even know who. There's probably like a sort of quiet teenager, sort of gothy girl that I'm thinking of that's too timid to say anything. Because that's what she's kind of like at the start of the movie. And then she opens up as the movie goes on, which is part of the whole point of the plot and the themes. But I will say, I think it's a pretty decent movie that I don't love. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
And you know, there's definitely some chuckles I had later on with some of the more horror related stuff and whatever. But I also don't think I ever, it never quite got on the rocket pad and launched into the stratosphere, if that makes sense. But it was perfectly fine, is what it was by the end. But unfortunately, it's not like a home run where we're sitting praising it either. So
yeah, and I agree with something you said too, where you're saying that it's not for me, which I kind of felt like. I mean, there might have been a time where I maybe might have related to this a bit more, like, but maybe I'm just getting too old and I've like seen too many of these movies. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, there's stuff I appreciate in it, but it's maybe just not the kind of thing that like bowls me over anymore. But I can definitely see maybe like, some younger kid or something that could see this and latch onto it and like really dig it as like the kind of weird, like maybe not super popular movie or something that they kind of like discover, in high school or something that. So, yeah, there's definitely stuff to like about it. And again, I don't think it's like a hard watch or anything. Like it didn't make me angry. It's just, you're just going to watch it and you're like, oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
No, because that's the thing. I think one of the things you said there is that you've seen a bunch of movies sort of this ilk before. Mm-hmm. And like you compare it to early Burton, and I don't like Tim Burton movies, so some of the style wasn't for me either. But I'd also compare it to something like like a Warm Bodies, which is a girl falling in love with a zombie or stuff like that.
One thing it kind of reminded me of, which I don't know if you've ever seen this. I don't think it's like a super popular movie, but there was a 90s movie called My Boyfriend's Back, which is basically about a girl who, I don't think it was actually her boyfriend, but it was like a guy that liked her. Maybe they just started going out, but he dies and comes back as a zombie.
He came back. I assumed you meant it was about her boyfriend's back, like his physical back.
No. I know that's probably why it didn't do very well. It's probably very confusing.
So confusing. It's a confusing title.
But that's actually a really like weird movie. It's kind of fun if anyone wants to seek it out. I could be wrong, but I want to say it's directed by Bob Balaban, which I don't know, it doesn't seem like the kind of movie I would assume that he would direct, but okay. Also has like a really like young Philip Seymour Hoffman playing a high school student, which it's so weird because he still like looks like Philip Seymour Hoffman, but he's like a high school jock.
Wait a minute, he was in like Twister in the 90s though. Like I'm having a hard time imagining he was young enough to play a high schooler in the 90s, but
I mean, I wouldn't say he looked like a high schooler, but
fair.
But I mean, the movie is like very like campy though, so like I think you can kind of get away with that kind of casting.
Yeah, I think a movie like this, like there's some people who are just going to love that campy tone that it has, and I think I can, but it's very much like a fine-tuned thing where like a little to the left or right of the exact thing that's going to work for me is just going to feel a little off. But for someone else, that's exactly the tone that they appreciate and like. Yeah. I would say this is just slightly to the side of kind of a quirky tone that I could be on board with.
Yeah.
So, but again, I respect this way more than most of the crap we were catching up with from 2023 over the last few months. Like, this is definitely a better movie than most of those, and it's better than Night Swim. So, like,
yeah. And yeah, I can't really, maybe aside from like a little bit of the beginning, like overall, I wasn't bored watching it or anything, which I think that was a big problem with like a lot of my cat's going crazy with like a lot of the stuff from we were catching up with 2023 and stuff that a lot of it was just kind of like boring or dull. Like, while I wouldn't say this movie was hitting, at least I can say it kept me more interested than a lot of other stuff we watched lately.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's just that it's not quite for me, and I think I wouldn't say it's maybe knocking what it's doing out of the park, but I'd say it's doing a pretty reasonable job of succeeding what it's trying to do. So, and that's why people who this is going to appeal to are going to be way more into it than I think we are. So, that's fine. Like, I guess when it comes to this type of subgenre of horror comedy, I guess I'm just more of a Frankenhooker type of guy.
It's funny, I was thinking recently, like, we really should do that, because I don't think we've done that on the show.
We have not. No, we have not done Frankenhooker. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess. Well, before we get spoiled, I'll just mention this is a very soundtrack-heavy movie. There is a lot of songs throughout, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. Some of them are, fine picks. But I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
Okay, spoilers. So we got. Is there anything else you want to say without spoilers?
Let's see. The lighting was good.
Tim. Sometimes you sound like someone who's never spoken about a movie before, try to say something about a movie. It liked its pink lighting, yes. There was a lot of pink, and so especially in the early scenes, they were doing a lot of that, which is again is very 80s. Remember when we did Vamp? Vamp was like nothing but green and pink lights everywhere for no reason, even though it made no sense. But hey, we're in the sewer. It's all pink and green. Why? Just accept it. Don't ask questions.
Please, I beg you, stop asking questions.
But yeah, yes, that's true. Yes. All right, spoilers then for Lisa Frankenstein. You have been warned, everyone. So the backstory of this movie, which we learned quite early on, is that Lisa, her mother was killed. A home intruder in a mask came in and killed her mum, and she hid in the closet, but survived, obviously.
And the wild thing is that I kept expecting them to have some type of resolution, like the killer would come back at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Or, but there really is nothing about that.
Yeah, I kept expecting them to somehow end up revealing who the killer was, and that maybe the zombie boyfriend was going to like fight him or something. Like, I don't know. Yeah, but it never came up again, really, because they specifically say, "Oh, and he got away with it and was never found," which, for the opening of a movie, suggests, oh, this might be a thing later. In some ways, I guess I'm glad they didn't do the obvious thing, but.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in retrospect, it's like kind of funny that it's like not that big a deal. And then also it's, they do that thing in like horror movies where, I mean, it's okay in this movie because it's like a comedy, but of course, like something like this would be so devastating to a person that, you would kind of get like a free pass for like the rest of your life. I feel like, but just like anytime, like, the mother is needling her, or like someone at school is kind of like, making fun of her or whatever. And
just in case anyone's not watched it and is confused, Tim means her stepmother is needling her.
Stepmother, sorry, yes. But it's so funny. It's just like, anytime like someone is like, being like a little shitty to her, it's like, geez, give the girl a break. Like her mom was murdered by a masked like killer in front of her. It's a comedy though, so
it's funny because see when they first mentioned all this, I thought, oh, they're going to reveal later the dad did it because we find out before we meet him that he married like 6 months later to Carla Gugino, who plays the stepmom, and I thought that until we actually met the dad, and he's that actor who always plays kind of the just sort of the aloof, bored kind of dad who's clueless about things, and I'm like, okay, there's no way they're going to turn him into a killer. He's just too. You wouldn't cast this actor in this role if he was going to turn out to be a man who murdered his wife.
Yeah, I think my wife thought it might be the stepmom, maybe like was the killer, like she did that. So, which would have made sense. Obviously, I could see that for the character, but
yeah, she's obviously very much a wicked stepmother kind of thing, but in a very sort of passive aggressive way. We're like, oh, why is Lisa being so weird? Like she's crazy, and I think actually one of the most endearing things about the movie. So we've got this setup where it's her dad's married again, and she's got a stepmom and a stepsister who is like a perky cheerleader, always happy go lucky kind of character. I think one of the most. Her
name's Taffy.
Her name's Taffy, which I actually, because our license plate in her car, our little red car, which they kind of like emphasize, the license plate is like Laffy T, I think. And I didn't realize until they called her Taffy later that I thought, oh, that's why it's so funny. I mean, I don't know how many teenagers actually get custom license plates. I guess if you've got rich parents, they might give you one. Yeah. Whatever. So I think one of the best and most interesting things of this whole movie is actually the Taffy character, because
I agree. Yeah.
She I was expecting early on when she's trying to be nice to her and she's like, hey, come to this party with me. You can borrow some of my clothes. I was expecting her. When Lisa starts being weird and talking about hanging out in the cemetery, I thought, oh, she's going to turn on her. She's going to be the evil stepsister because, Lisa's a weirdo. But all throughout the movie, pretty much, she sticks up for Lisa even when even when Taffy's own mother specifically and her stepdad are ganging up on Lisa. She's standing there defending her. It's actually the most endearing part of the whole movie, is that Taffy, despite what you'd think and what you'd expect from her, always is looking out for Lisa. It's actually like the most interesting character decision of the whole thing.
I agree. Yeah, I actually like that a lot. I thought that was a smart move. Even like, yeah, towards the end, like, you know, you see she still like obviously has this like affection for her. And I'm not really familiar with that actress, but I thought she did a really good job of like selling that character. And I was like, oh yeah, like
confusingly named Liza.
Liza. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And I thought there's like a few character things like this that I was like, okay, they kind of did like a little swerve or something I didn't expect.
Yeah, looking at her IMDb, it looks like it's mostly been like TV shows and direct-to-video stuff. So I think this is maybe one of her first sort of bigger movies. But yeah, it was a solid outing, I think, for her. Yeah, I like. Because to me, this movie, because I was kind of looking for, like, okay, what's the underlying metaphor of this movie? Especially in a movie where we kind of treat people being murdered like it's just kind of a joke and we don't take it very seriously. What's this really getting at? And I kind of took it as, like, Lisa's whole arc throughout this movie is just starts off really timid and quiet. And I kind of took the zombie that reanimates from the... Because basically, lightning strikes the cemetery she visits, and there's like a bust of a guy on a tombstone that she thinks is cute, and that's the guy that reanimates, played by Cole Sprouse. Still playing high schoolers. He's been playing high schoolers as well for like, because Riverdale started in like what 2017 or something like that. So he's been playing high schoolers for a good while. Yeah. Right, 7 years ago.
And I'm assuming he wasn't like 14 when he started.
No, he was. I don't know. You know what? I'm curious. What age is Cole Sprouse? Let's find out. Let's do it. He's 31!
Whoa.
He's only 3 years younger than me. To be fair, technically he's not a high schooler in this.
He's like, yeah, undead.
He's just an undead young man.
Yeah.
Technically, he isn't supposed to be a high schooler in this, so I suppose I can't really argue that. I guess I just assumed that he was about that age, technically, because he's the love interest of the high schooler, but... Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a little icky if he's like, even if he's a corpse, it's still kind of gross if he's like the corpse of a 45-year-old or something.
Yeah. So maybe he's maybe a little older, so that's whatever. Yeah. But still, I wasn't expecting 30s. I'm actually surprised that it was that high up. But I think Kathryn Newton's like in her mid to late 20s as well, so it's not even like
probably
that much of a difference either. Yeah, so to me, the way I was sort of looking at this movie by the time it got to the end was that he kind of represents her inner, like, person, because when he first like comes to life and he's like, we get some hijinks obviously, which we'll talk about, of his first appearance and whatnot, but she kind of hides him all the time, and that kind of represented to me that she always hides who she really is. She never wants to open up. She's always an introvert. But as the movie goes on, she gets more confident. She wears more kind of outrageous outfits, and they're kind of sexy, but not in like a normal sexy. So she's going for like, well, let's face it, Winona Ryder and Beetlejuice. Like she's going for that kind of thing, but she's willing to put herself out there, even if it's kind of an irregular sort of look and image, and like she's willing to be herself. And by the end, like, you know, the zombie boyfriend is more overtly doing things, and like she's letting him out the closet, you know, kind of thing. So to me, that was what the movie was about. It was kind of like a coming of age story of someone sort of coming out of their shell, but under the you know, the metaphor of all this wacky zombie murder nonsense.
Hey, you might even call it a coming of rage story.
Is that better or worse than your friend zone tagline?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think I can take credit for it, because I want to say that was... Is that like the tagline for Carrie 2 or something? I feel like that sounds tagline or something.
Well, I think that the movie's title was called The Rage Carrie 2. But, okay. I mean, maybe that was... honestly, though, if they put the word rage in the tagline as well, I'd be like, that's a bit lazy. That just sounds lazy to me, if that's what they did.
Have we done that one?
No, we haven't yet. No,
we should at some point.
It's on the to-do list. It's just on a side
Second
note,
best death by CD scene since Hellraiser 3.
Oh, I mean, I did see it on like cable when I was like 13, but I do not remember any of it, so I do not remember this CD death. But I just side note, I hate like these sequels that think they're fancy by putting the subtitle first. It annoys me to no end. I'm looking at you, Lost World, Jurassic Park. I'm looking at you, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Piss off, the lot of you. I don't like it. See, when I'm putting things into my movie, the database, do you know what I'm doing? I'm flipping that shit around so that alphabetically they show up in the right order. You will not ruin my database, you son of a bitches. I will not have it.
It drives me crazy because I got my physical library, and then it must be in alphabetical order, but of course, it throws it off.
I used to just ignore that. Like I'd always put Lost World in between Jurassic Park 1 and 3. I'm not putting that under L. Like, come on, piss off. Same with the Rambo movies. Like I'm not putting First Blood at F. I'll just put it with the other Rambo movies. Just because it's weird. And anyway, that's the soapbox of movie collecting for the episode. You're welcome, everyone. All right, I got my serious bit of analysis out the way. We can commence with your tomfoolery, Tim. So yes, anyway, so they go to a party at the start of the movie, which we find out she likes a boy.
Lisa does?
Lisa does, yeah. Was it Trent? Was that his name? The guy who works
Michael,
at the... Was it Michael?
Trent?
Michael Trent.
Yeah.
Sounds like a news reporter or something, like tonight on the 6 o'clock news, Michael Trent.
Well, he was like the head of the school literary magazine or something.
That's not quite in the same level, I don't think, as the actual TV news, but yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a fake movie name, I guess is what I'm saying. Sounds a bit too...
Oh, sure, yeah.
Too neat and perfect. But he actually starts...
From the movie with a character named Taffy?
Okay, point taken, but shut up. He actually starts talking to her at the party, and then his friend, who's like this sort of goth girl, comes up and like offers her a drink, which Lisa doesn't initially take, but feels like, I look like a loser if I don't accept the drink, so I'm going to take a sip. But it's actually spiked, so she immediately starts tripping and kind of, losing herself in front of everyone.
This is like the craziest part of the movie to me. I mean,
not the reanimated corpse. Yeah.
I mean, that stuff all makes sense, but like, it's just wild to me that like everyone sees her drink this, everyone sees her start like, losing it, and like it's very obvious that it was spiked or drug, and then I think people even comment about that, but then they just let her walk off.
Well, what made me laugh about it is that her stepsister storms over to like the guy and the girl and starts grilling them out for doing this, but I did I did notice that, you stormed over there to grill them out because you care about her, but you're leaving her stumble off on her own to who knows what. Like, surely the priority right now would be taking care of her and then dealing with the culprits later. And what's funny is this nerdy guy comes up and is like, "Hey, Lisa," and he's nice enough, and he's like, "Hey, let's go and get you sit down somewhere since you're not feeling great." And immediately, like, the red flag was like going off, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with what he just said, and if he just sat her on the couch or something, I wouldn't think twice, but of course he takes her to a bedroom, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to go bad, but I've got a feeling he's going to. Yeah. They do treat it with like a sort of level of, I don't know, like comic timing, I guess, because like you just have this thing where he's sitting next to her in the bed, and then she just kind of stops and looks down, and like, He's literally just like, it's not even like he's leaned in for a kiss. It's like she just looks down and there's just a hand on her boob, and then he tries to move her hand somewhere, and she's like, no, not happening, and kind of stumbles out. But this has got a purpose, of course, because she's going to do something bad to this guy later. So it's
kind of interesting. Like, I did like there's a purpose for it. Like, it does
I mean, hell,
end up.
it's literally the hand that he touched her with that is utilized later.
Yeah, so like it's like I get why it's there, but it did seem like weirdly dark for this type of movie. That like obviously there's like murder and stuff in the movie, but that stuff like it's kind of on like a very different level.
It's
than,
all
like,
comical. It's also a black comedy. Yeah,
like this I think, and it's also very like over the top, and like when you're dealing with like killers in masks and reanimated corpses, like there's a level of detachment there when it's like, yeah, like someone getting like sexually assaulted at a party, like that is very real. But I mean,
it is weird because it's like on some level, because they even have him say a couple of really like bad lines, like not bad and badly written. I mean like bad in the sense that he says, "Oh, you were teased, Lisa. You led me on." Like it feels like it's speaking to something very, very real. But everything else in the movie has got this like heightened sense of like layer of metaphor or like satire on top of it, and this just feels a bit more straight to the point. So I don't know, maybe it's possible to do like black comedy with the subject of sexual assault, but I'm not convinced you can. I feel like I don't know how you do it. Whereas with murder and death, like, oh, I can laugh at that all day of the week. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't know. I don't know why I start analyzing society. We're not. This is not the show for it. But
sure. I mean, it's tough, and then like I don't know, and obviously we're coming at it from a male perspective. Like I don't know if there's if it'd be harder, to watch as I mean, typically in these situations, you get it's usually like the female that's getting assaulted. But I mean, I don't know if if part of it is trying to like shine a light to it and say like, hey, like this is something that we don't want to act like this doesn't happen, and then I guess it does make it feel a little good later when he kind of gets his just desserts. So yeah, I mean I don't know if I don't want to say that like, oh, it shouldn't be here or something, but it did stick out as being like kind of like, oh, like this is going in a darker place than I anticipated.
Yeah, tonally it feels just a little bit darker than everything else in the movie, and I don't know. Again, maybe it's not for us to have this debate if it is too dark. But it did feel like a notch darker than everything else. Maybe it's just because I can't take that as lightly as it like anything else in the movie. Everything else I can kind of laugh at and whatever. But I mean, don't get me wrong. It is definitely the least. If it could have obviously been much worse. It's probably the
right. Like at least it doesn't go to the level you were thinking that it might. Like,
I mean, even without like being graphic or anything, it's not even like. He tries to force on top of her while she screams or something that would have felt really, really dark. It's probably the most tame version of this that you can possibly have. So I think they were clearly aware that they didn't want to like make it feel super dark. But it is interesting, just like how it stands against the rest of the movie, because because nothing else in the movie after this comes close to this, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But hey,
no, definitely not.
But yeah. So when she gets home, she wakes up the next morning. She has like a weird dream first, which I don't even remember what happened in this dream, other than just everything looked it was made of paper.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember this scene either.
And the zombie boy was sitting next to her on the bed, I think, but that was basically it. But we get a proper introduction to the parents after this, because the stepmom is mad that the mirror in the bathroom's broken, and she immediately blames Lisa for it. The dad's just kind of, he's sitting eating his cereal, doesn't want to really interject too much. But the stepmom wants justice. She wants apology. She wants retribution.
Yeah. And again, like, she's like the over the top wicked stepmother, like you said. And like, so in reality, like, they should sit her down and say like, hey, let's talk about this. Are there still some unresolved issues with your mother? Like, how can we move forward from this? But of course, she's not like that. She's just more concerned about, like, don't I provide for you? Haven't I given you, like, wasn't it so good of me to let you, like, move into my home and stuff? And,
she's a vapid character. I mean, I think the fact that, the scene later on where some other stuff happens, she's, like, wearing the classic, like, 80s spandex, like, workout outfit, and she's got the leg warmers on, and I don't know, everything about her just spells like middle class, like vapid housewife kind of vibe. Even though she's not a housewife, she does have a job, but
yeah, she's basically like a Nurse Ratched from One Flew
yeah,
Over
she's a
the Cuckoo's
nurse
Nest.
at a mental hospital or something like that, or a psych hospital.
Yeah.
But she still says like, "Oh, you belong in the loony bin." You'd think she'd be a bit more sensitive to such a subject, given that she actually works in that field.
Yeah. I'm the only thing I can say is maybe and since it was the 80s, probably wasn't as concerned. Like, I can see why the younger kids would maybe call her out on it, but she's such like a repugnant character that she probably just doesn't care.
Nah. I don't know, maybe it's saying something about sometimes people who work in certain professions are actually like, you know, there was like an awful story the other week about someone. It was like a teacher aide who like gets on the school bus, was like caught.
Oh, this is like an actual news story.
Yeah, this was an actual news story.
Oh, okay.
Someone was they were caught on video making fun of the special needs student on camera,
Oh,
and this is the person that's there to help those types of students.
God.
So I don't know. My mind went to that when she started being all, you know. So,
Every day is just like one like less reason you don't want to belong in this world.
yeah, humanity's a cesspool. Yeah. Yeah. Anywho, this is getting depressing.
She has to.
Yeah.
I know. We'll get back to the light stuff. So she has to pay back for the mirror, which she mentions that she works at I think she said like Wayne's or something. Which
It's
at first I assumed.
Yeah, I'd go.
Oh, I assumed it was going to be like a restaurant or something, but it was like a laundromat or a tailor.
Yeah,
place.
she sews at the whatever this place is, which I thought was going to be more of like a recurring thing in the movie, but there's literally right after we find out about it, there's one scene at this like tailoring place or dry cleaners or whatever it is, and that's it. We never go back there again, and the fact that she works there is never. I guess it's meant to justify that she knows how to sew on body parts because she sews clothes. I think that's the only reason why they gave her this job.
I think when I first saw her like sewing the body part on, I was like, oh, okay, that's why they had that scene. Okay. But I could see like the different version of this movie where if you really wanted to like up the body count, like you could have had like the boss be overly mean, and then there's also people like.
You say that, but he is a bit mean. Like, he has this like line was like, oh
yeah,
because the guy she likes is in because he got a stain in his jacket, and he's like, you know, talking about it, and he's like, oh wait, Lisa has friends. That's surprising. She's always free to work on a Saturday night. She can never get a date. Probably because she's so flat-chested. I'm like, dude, you're 48 years old. You can't say that about a teenager.
I forgot about that. That was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, there's honestly like there's not that many like deaths really in the movie, but like I mean, which is fine, you know, it doesn't have to have
it's
like
not a
50,
body count movie for sure. Yeah, it's not that type of movie.
But like if you did want to have a few more though, like I could definitely see like some of the people you could have used.
I think I saw an article saying that there may be an R-rated cut at some point. Okay. So I mean, not add any deaths. It may just make the ones that are there more grisly, but still, or maybe more with that massager later on, which we'll get to. Which, for the record, I thought that type of sex toy, is there a blanket name for this type of item? This is the one with, you know, it's almost like a microphone, right? You got the fuzzy bit at the top, and then the handle, right? I thought that was a newer invention. I didn't realize those existed in the 80s. Clearly, I'm no expert.
I have no idea
because I was not around at the time. But
well, I mean, maybe it literally was just like a back massager, but people used it for that.
Oh, you think they literally started as a back massager, and then
I wouldn't be surprised.
Over time, it was like, no, this is what people are actually using it for. It got me thinking though about how women have such a like. I'm not saying this makes up for all the inequality in the world because it does not, but I will say women definitely have a wider range of sex toys to choose from than men.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There's a lot more on offer, and they're a lot more discreet because it's a massager. It's a, you know, it's a soothing thing or whatever. It's, you know, it's always something like that.
Who doesn't like a good massage?
Right? If you're a man, you've got one option. It's a fleshlight.
Or blow up doll. let's not forget the blow up doll.
Oh, I didn't realize you were such an expert in this stuff, Tim. I'm sorry. I see I've came before the master, and he knows more than I do. Which one would you recommend, Tim?
Oh, who can choose?
Oh dear. Anywho.
One thing that we did forget to was also like when she's getting ready for the party, they have like a little tanning bed.
Oh, this is important. You're right. Yeah, this is important. Yeah.
Taffy is like, kind of giving Lisa like a little bit of a makeover, but I thought it was just a funny scene. Like they go into this tanning bed, and I think it just cuts to like them outside of it, and like Taffy says something like, "Oh, I'm sorry you got electrocuted," or something like that. Yeah.
Well, you do actually get a little like moment of seeing it kind of. Sort of go bzzz, right, and that was actually one of the things that made me go, oh, I don't know if this is like that was one of the jokes that fell flat for me. I was like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna like this very much because it's not. There was stuff that I liked later on, but like definitely the first like 15 minutes I would say were probably the least I was into it.
I agree. Yeah, I just like I think it was just like Taffy's line reading of like, like electrocuted. I just thought tickled me.
It's a very dangerous tanning bed because apparently it does this every time you turn it on, going by the rest of the movie, because it's used to help rejuvenate our zombie boyfriend, isn't it? Does he ever have? He's just called the creature in the credits. I was curious what he was credited as, because I mean I presume his tombstone might have a name on it.
I mean, was it Frankenstein? Was that literally on the tombstone?
Oh, was it? I don't know.
Yeah, because I think she does like an etching of a tombstone with Frankenstein on it, and then that kind of turns into like the title.
True. Yeah, at the start. Yeah,
I forget.
I didn't realize that if that was his tombstone though, because we hadn't really been introduced to any of that yet. Yeah, but fair point. So, yeah, she comes home from work and she doesn't want to go out to a movie with everyone else, and we also get another little like taste of how mean the stepmom is that she comes in, they've been having dinner and they had pizza, right? And she's like, oh, is there any pizza left though? I've not eaten, because she's been at work and doing extra shifts to pay for the stupid stepmother's mirror. And he's like, yeah, I think there's a slice left, which by the way, one slice after a day's work, come on now, that's not enough. But she goes over and he opens it. And he's like, oh no, there might be some meat on it, honey. And then you see it cuts to a shot of the slice of pizza, and it's like a mountain. You can't even see the cheese. There's so much meat on top of it.
It is more like meatball than pizza.
It really is. It looked nice. Don't get me wrong. I would definitely eat it. But which this is like, I guess maybe another slight problem. Like this is a nitpick. It's just a nitpick. But much like the place where she works, it's kind of like, oh, I guess she's a vegetarian. That didn't really come up before, and it never comes up again after. It's really just for this one joke, which is not like the end of the world, but typically the comedies that I like a lot tend to like have a lot more like everything's got a purpose later on as well. Everything's like something that comes back up again. Whereas this feels like there's a few things like this where it's just like one and that's it, and we just never bring it up again.
Yeah, I mean, typically you think you might do is like the rule of three, like you might have like, have it come back one more time and then like have like a big, bombastic punchline at the end for it or something. But
yeah, so again, it's a bit nitpicky because it's honestly the moment itself worked fine because the visual cut to the slice of pizza with all the meat on it was funny. Right, yeah. And all you needed was the dad saying, "I think there might be some meat on it." Cut to mountain of meat. Funny,
yeah. Right? And then afterward, I think the stepmom says like, "Oh, she can just pick it off," but it's like literally like there's like, which might be fine if it was like, 2 or 3 pepperonis, but like we said, like it's just so over the top. Just meat mountain. It's impossible. There's
so much on it, to be honest. You wouldn't pick it off. You just flip the slice upside down and shake it and hope for the best. And then she's like, oh yeah, we had a coupon to get a free drink if we got the ultra meaty whatever pizza. So right. Yeah, all right, fair enough. But anyway, they go out to a movie and I'll be honest, I didn't catch that it was set in like the time. Like I obviously it looked very 80s-esque. But I didn't realize that it was actually set in the 80s until they said, we're going to go see Look Who's Talking. And I went, oh, it's actually set in the 80s. I thought it was just like a visual style. And then she stays at home and watches Day of the Dead. Did you pop for Day of the Dead, Tim?
I love the movie, but I don't know, were they really showing this on TV at the time, you know? Like, I don't know.
This was about 4 years after it came out, so maybe.
Maybe.
Besides, it could have been video.
I guess, like, I mean, again, I like the movie. Maybe it's weird to complain, but it's always, like, so perfectly on, like, the best part. You know what I mean? That it always feels...
that's just... When movies show people watching movies, they always do that. But this is definitely in the we're deep into the VHS era, so this she could just own it on video. It's not.
That's true.
It's not that weird.
And, hey, it's nice that they didn't opt for the easy Night of the Living Dead public domain clip.
That's true. That's almost like a baller move. You're like, oh, we could have used the free one, but we didn't. We used the one that. Although, didn't Universal have something to do with Day of the Dead? And they made this movie, or they distributed this movie.
Sense, yeah.
So I wonder if that's why they were able to. They're like, hey, can we have what zombie movies you got, Universal? Before 1989 specifically. Because they do also have the rights to Shaun of the Dead, but that wouldn't have made much sense given, you know, the time period.
Right.
Which would have been funny.
Unless they explained she had a future VCR or something.
Yes. Because when you think the future, you think VCR. So this is when, during the night, the lightning struck or whatever, and the zombie kind of comes smashing through the window, and we get a whole sequence where she's running away from it. But he's covered in dirt right now, so he's kind of like just like a monster almost, the way he's moving around with all this dirt on him. And it's not until she ends up climbing outside the top window and into the yard where all the sprinklers come on that seemingly he gets cleaned up enough to be recognizable as a human being of some sort. And then he's inside and she ends up just kind of bonding with him, I guess.
Yeah, there's a little bit of running back and forth, and then I forget exactly what, like, predicates it, but eventually she realizes, like, oh, like, yeah, you're just a person. Obviously a reanimated corpse of a person, but you're not trying to harm me. And then I feel like they, like, she very quickly, yeah, is like, all right, let's get you cleaned up and, like, give you, like, a makeover and do, like, a little dress montage.
Well, I think she realizes that it's specifically the guy from the statue before she...
He takes out, like, the rosary that she left.
Yeah, that's right. Which was something that belonged to her mother that she put on his gravestone. So, yeah. So he goes in the shower and you just see, like, worms and dirt all, like, going down the drain, and he's a little bit cleaned up. But she effectively starts just hiding him in the closet. Although they do establish that he's missing an ear and he's missing a hand. We don't find out till much later, but he's also missing a penis. That'll come up.
That's right.
At some point. But we don't know that until much later in the movie. Which, I guess in a weird way, the part where the nerdy guy tried to assault her, where he took her hand and put it on his crotch, you could almost argue that's kind of foreshadowing, because later on, because he can't speak, the zombie, right? So he literally shows her this by just grabbing her hand and, like, here, feel, and she goes, right, yeah. you're missing the equipment, which he tries to assure him is not a big deal, but he finds one. It's okay. He finds one. It's probably around here we start actually seeing her go to school and interacting with other people there. Like, her sister's still nice to her, but her sister's friends clearly don't like her very much. They're not overly mean, they just clearly don't want to be around her, which is whatever.
And I think it's kind of interesting too that, like, as soon as the creature shows up, and once she kind of realizes that he doesn't want to hurt her, she instantly seems to, like, open up, and she's, like, talking a lot more.
In fact, it's him that, because they do a whole silly montage this first night where she keeps pushing him into the closet and closing the doors, and then he tries on different clothes, presumably belonging to her dad. So we get, like, it's basically the montage you get in any movie where they go clothes shopping and they keep come out of the changing room, but it's the closet. So the zombie comes out wearing different things, and like, she's, like, reacting and judging them whatever, until he finally puts on like a sort of like a music shirt and like a blazer, and she's like, that's the look. But the next day when she's trying to get dressed, he just like pushes out this sort of black dress at her, and she's like, oh no, that was my sister's, she gave it to me because whatever reason, and she doesn't really want to wear it, but he kind of insists, no, this is you. And it's kind of, it doesn't play like he's being demanded in making her wear it. It's more this idea that, like I said, he represents like her inner self, and it's like, no, this is who you actually are, is you want to wear this. And she does. She wears this black kind of, Winona Ryder from Beetlejuice type outfit and a hat, and she looks at high school, and they're all looking at her like she's a bit of a weirdo, but some people are like, oh, hey, she looks good today. She looks more adventurous. She looks whatever,
Yeah. So. You can already tell, like, starting to come out of her shell a little bit.
Yeah. She's willing to sort of fight back a little bit. She even sends a note. It's probably not this first day. I'm a little bit fuzzy like how quickly this happens, but basically, like the zombie keeps wanting, he keeps like sort of like motioning that he wants a new hand, and she's like, I can't give you new parts. I'm not a doctor. I can't do that. Also, obviously, when the parents and that get home that night, he showed up, the window's broken, and there's like other ornaments that she was throwing at him that are broken. So the stepmother's losing her shit again, says, oh, you're a little vandal. Clearly, you got so much attention when the tragedy happened that you just want to recapture it. So
it's so awful.
We're going to get you committed. And the dad just doesn't even try. Although the stepsister does try to stick up for her, like I was saying earlier. But basically, when she's out of school the next day, the zombie has a bit of like a sort of comedy bit with the stepmom, because the stepmom's home. She's trying to have her diet lunch, whatever it is. It's like fruit and something. I don't even know what the other stuff in the bowl was.
I assume like yogurt or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But there's basically this sort of comedy thing where they just keep missing each other. Like the zombie's kind of like wandering around and just keeps not interacting with her by chance. But when she's away answering the door to a salesman, the zombie vomits up like a worm into her food, which, by the way, I don't like worms. I don't like people eating worms. This was kind of disgusting. Both the spitting it out and then her like pulling it out of her mouth after she takes a bite. Ugh.
That's not great.
No. But this she blames Lisa for this. So later on, she confronts Lisa for doing stuff, and she's like, oh, I spoke to someone at my work today, the teenage like delinquent department. We're going to have you committed. You're going away. And zombie boy comes out behind her and hits her in the head with a sewing machine and kills her. And we have her first death. And then he cuts off her ear and gets Lisa to sew it on, which obviously it doesn't work. Like that is like, he can't hear through it. And she's like, well, maybe it's just for looks. What was the line she had here? My auntie got fake boobs and she can't feel anything, but she still got a husband.
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, that was an okay line. But then they put him in the tanning bed and electrocute him, and that fixes the ear so it actually works, so he can hear. He also looks more normal after this. I noticed this every time he uses the tanning bed after they attach a new part. He always comes back looking more like a healthy human being. I don't know if you were noticing this.
Oh yeah, because like when you first see him, he is like very like pale, like there's no basically like any color in his face, and then the more he uses it, it's like he is getting more and more like of a I guess like a tan basically.
Yeah, kinda, yeah. But clearly it's doing more than that. It's actually making him more alive, literally. So but yeah, so it's not too long after this where she leaves a note. She writes out a note asking a boy to be somewhere and puts it in the locker and gets a yes. And the movie's kind of swerving you here because you think it's going to be the guy she likes, but it turns out to be the nerd who touched her at the party. And you're like, oh, this is a trap. She's luring him into a trap. And she takes him into like where the cemetery is, basically this like hidden cemetery in the woods where the boy came from in the first place. And basically, like the zombie boy shows up and cuts off his hand. It's quite something. Actually, this is one of the few moments where I did feel like the direction had a little bit of like a roughness to it. Particularly the moment where he's standing in front of her and the zombie comes out of the grave and grabs his legs. And then it kind of awkwardly cuts to then him getting out of the grave, and the teenage boy who's there to be attacked is just kind of like on his knee, looking over his shoulder, and it felt kind of weird. I didn't really understand how being grabbed by the shins put him in that position, and why it'd be like there was just a disconnect in continuity for me that didn't feel quite right, and that felt like maybe a little bit of a directing blunder in the action. But I mean, the actual cutting off his hand was entertaining. Like, you know, you actually see a hand come off and he's screaming, and then the zombie throws an axe at him when he tries to run away, and you get this like ridiculous shot of the axe spinning in front of the camera, which is very unnatural but kind of funny. You know, it's a creative choice, is what I'm trying to say. And
again, you hate this guy so much that it's, you know, it's fun to see this happen to him.
Yeah, I will say the person who I feel like, you know, the stepmother's awful, probably doesn't deserve to be killed. This guy's awful, probably doesn't deserve to be killed. But, you know, it's a movie, you kind of go with it. I think the one that it felt like a little unfair is the guy she likes when he meets his demise. It feels like he didn't really do anything wrong. You know, he didn't actually do anything bad. He just doesn't like her. And it feels like, oh, yeah, he probably didn't deserve to be murdered and have his dick cut off.
That's fair.
You know, probably not. But and they even get questioned at the school. The police are looking about because there's a missing boy. Meanwhile, the dad and the sister think the stepmom's away on like a seminar. Something like that. So they're like, oh, she'll be back soon. But then they try to phone her hotel and she won't answer. There's no one's ever checked in. So they start getting worried. And it's really interesting because the stepsister, who's been looking quite, you know, made up and perky and all that, like, she starts looking like she's mopey, like she's not putting on makeup, like she's kind of like just sauntering through the world, and like the tables have flipped a little bit by the end.
One thing that I thought was kind of funny is that, like, they're clearly not very good at like being murderers. Like, they don't seem to have much of like any type of contingency plan for like what they're doing, and that's why like the scene with the police I actually thought was pretty funny. Because like, you know, she like everything is said, she's like, oh no, like, I don't really know him that well. And then like they have the other like goth girls there, and like every time she says something, she's like, well no, like you know, people say like you know, that you were supposed to, like, you dropped a note in his locker, and then like, oh, and they said like you were meeting up with him after class, and people saw you going into like the cemetery with him. Like, she clearly hasn't like really thought about this or tried to cover her tracks that well.
No, she just kind of gets all sort of like annoyed teenage girl at it. And I think maybe you could argue this kind of emulates, you know how like people say teenagers like get kind of like shitty and like they're impossible.
Sure, yeah.
And they get like an attitude. It kind of felt like that was this part of her character arc, is she's getting like a bit of a like I hate the world attitude kind of thing. She's lashing out.
Yeah, I think there's like some interesting stuff there, and like, you know, including like the thing where like you really like someone that you're infatuated with, and then you find out that like they really suck. Like, I like she has that little meltdown when she confronts him, as like oh, like, you think you're so cool, but really you just like to like cool things, and you don't like it when other people like those things. And then like like, you know, like later on, like when she kind of has that realization, and she you know, tells her sister like, oh hey, you know, I feel like, you know, you were actually like really nice to me and looking out for me. Like, I wasn't really, you know, appreciating that or acknowledging that. So I think there's like some interesting like observations in this.
Yeah, like she, like, you know, everyone who is bad to her, again, I wouldn't count the guy she likes because he wasn't really bad to her. Like, maybe you could read it from her perspective. Not that she decides to kill him, the zombie comes in and kills him, to be fair. But, and again, if you read him as representing her inner self, it's just kind of like the anger she's feeling in the moment. You don't have to take it literally, I guess. But everyone else that dies is someone who is bad to her. It's someone who is a negative force in her life in some way. So it's almost like she's cutting them off, and she's like becoming more independent as the movie goes on. Again, not taking it literally, but just sort of analyzing kind of what it maybe all represents. But yeah, obviously that doesn't go so well. The sister's feeling really bad, and basically we have the whole massage thing around this part where he finds the vibrator in the closet, and she's like, "Oh, that's just a massager for your back." And then later on, he's got her like massaging her back, by holding it up at her back for her. And then she's like, you can use that other places. And it just kind of cuts away, but you hear her scream, "Oh my God," at one point off in the distance. But they talk about sex. They talk about, like, he sort of like indicates that he's had sex once and that he loved the girl. And she's like, "I want that." And this is what convinces her, like the next day or whatever it is, that she wants to go to the guy she likes and have sex. She's just going to show up at his house and just assume. Now, admittedly, he's a teenage boy, so he probably will just say yes. But but she's just going to go to his house and just give it a try, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I kind of like how frank they were about like some of these
Frankenstein.
Things. Exactly. But just like, yeah, like she was very open about like just being like horny and wanting to get laid, and like even like like there's stuff where like she'll just, I don't know, talk about like feminine products or like something, which I feel
gotta
like...
laugh because I don't think I've ever seen the sponge, the contraceptive sponge. I don't think I've ever seen one of them in like the packaging before. And when it dropped when she ran away out of that scene later, I laughed because it did just look like a big chunky condom. Like that's what it looked like. It looked like a big condom, except it was like, an inch thick or whatever. I was like, oh, that's funny that it looks kind of similar, just bigger.
And there's a scene like me and my wife both laughed at like, because it was just like out of nowhere, but like at one point she just like randomly goes like, "Hold on, I gotta go change my pad," which is just like I don't know, I feel like you just don't see people like talking about like, I don't know, just like very casually talking about like their periods or like their tampons or whatever.
Do you think this is because teenage movies in the 80s were almost entirely all directed and written by men, and they never they just never thought to have casual references to that in there, unless they were doing specific jokes about a woman on her period, they would never bring it up. Whereas here, because it's both written and directed by women, it's just more of a natural, like, no, this is something that would come up. This is something that gets said.
Yeah, or like, if it would come up in like an older movie, it would be like very like, oh, hush, hush, like we gotta like make sure no one's like listening or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a joke, as
and this isn't even a negative example because it's used really smartly in the story. But in Carrie, for example, like it's brought up because the men get uncomfortable, and the whole story is about the fact that she's going through this for the first time. Whereas this is, it's just a casual reference to the fact that, oh yeah, this is something she does, like, because of course she does. Yeah, she goes over to have sex, and she finds, to her surprise, him in bed with her stepsister. It turns out that Taffy and this guy have been having a hush-hush thing for a while, and every single time in the movie, Taffy said, "Oh, why do you like him? He's this, he's that." Part of it might be coming from a place where she's just trying to like say, no, he's already taken. Like, there's no point in barking up that tree, kind of thing.
One thing I was kind of interested in was, like, were they kind of having like a secret affair for a while, like before, they became like stepsisters or whatever, or before she knew that, she liked him, or was it like at the party when she confronted him, maybe they talked and then she kind of realized like, oh, actually this guy's kind of cool or whatever. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It was honestly, it was that little moment because it does those little quick flashbacks to like, oh, here's how they interacted after Lisa left the scene in these like few occasions. And it was that one at the party that kind of, it sounded to me like it was like, oh, I'm sorry, Taffy, like you already knew her, but I could be wrong. Maybe that was where they kind of met and started things off, but it felt like to me that they already knew each other at that point, but I could be wrong. But either way, Lisa gets pissed, and you can tell this is representing the emotional outrage of a teenager. But honestly, like, the guy's kind of right. He's not really done anything wrong. Like, he's not interested in Lisa. He's just been nice to her, and like, they're not doing anything wrong with them having a relationship. So
no, that's totally fair. Yeah. And then it is interesting though, because it does have that teenage overreaction of like, oh, like I was so in love with you, and it's like, oh, but like, yeah, we haven't even spoken that often,
Yeah, which is why I think the zombie definitely represents her inner self, for her. I mean, maybe you could argue it's her id or her whatever. To someone who does psychology can get more fancy with the terms, but Like, the fact that he just comes in a rage holding an axe and just immediately flips the sheet and chops off his dick, which is how he dies. Like, yeah.
Kind of a funny scene. I didn't think like the blood splatter. I thought it looked like pretty bad in the slow-mo.
Yeah, I think because they were doing like the ultra slow motion as the blood was spattering, which also was kind of sexual in a way because it was like spatter from a crotch,
Yeah,
so it was like almost like a facial because they both get hit in the face with blood. I also think there's some symbolism here that literally, because she doesn't know at this point that Zombie Boy doesn't have a dick, right? It's not until after this that he explains why he took it and why he's carrying it around with him. But there is maybe some symbolism here that he literally gets the libido of the guy she likes. Like, it's literally the guy she likes penis that is now on her. I don't know. I think there's something there maybe with that.
Yeah, I want to say that this is probably the next scene that actually made me laugh quite a bit, where I think they go back to the cemetery, which is now like has caution tape around it, and there's like...
Yeah, just in between that, there's the whole scene where, because she takes her sister out of there and she gives her the whole, like, oh, you really cared about me, and she gives her mother's rosary and says, hey, like, you know, you actually looked out for me when you could have just been mean, and I thought you were going to be... So she's, you know, there's like a sort of genuine, like, thankful for being a support. Because, you know, I think this is something that gets talked about a lot in media, is the idea of, like, female characters who are nice and supportive of other female characters, because quite often there's a tendency in media to write women as competing all the time, or write women who don't have like other female friends. And I think this was kind of a solid attempt of like this teenage character realizing, hey, you were actually being good to me and I wasn't really appreciating it. So there's kind of like a nice sentiment in there. But yeah, then they go to the cemetery afterwards.
And then this just made me laugh because I don't know, it was just kind of, I wasn't expecting it or whatever, but like this cop comes out of nowhere and they're like, hey, you can't be here. And then like the creature just like picks her up and like just throws her in the grave. But like, I don't know, the way it's done is just like, I don't know,
it's funny
to me.
Yeah, because it's like a small woman who's the cop. So he just kind of picks her up and she's kicking her legs and he just throws her into the open grave like it's nothing. And I'm like, oh,
and they just like treat it as like a mild annoyance. Like, ugh.
If we just, and to be fair, like the comedy at this point, like Lisa's like attitude whenever this stuff comes up now is pretty much just of, oh god, like we have to deal with these murders, oh, like, you know, like we didn't do this one properly. Like it's definitely not the real world reaction, but to be fair, by this point in the movie its tone is so clear that you're not thinking about it on those terms. You're fine with what it's doing. But yeah, honestly, this movie's got a bit of like a Return of the King thing where it fades to black and I thought it was ending like 4 times before it finally ended. But we see her sew on, and by see I mean we see the back of her head, but she sews on the penis onto the creature, which maybe this isn't important, but did he cut it off with the testicles, or did he still have testicles and it's just the penis that's been attached? These are the hard-hitting questions that need to be answered, I think. But and then like he goes into the tanning bed again, I think, and then he looks like the most human he ever has, pretty much. And then she goes into the tanning bed to kill herself by fire. You know, and we even see her dad arrive.
They have sex first, right?
Oh, so you have sex first. That's right. Yeah. I guess it was working. Presumably it was. Does he have much blood to flow? I don't know, but here.
They do this really weird like thing where like they cut away like when they're about to do it, and like it goes into like this little cartoon for just like a brief second, and I don't know, it stood out as being very weird to me. I'm not against this, like the idea of it, but I just don't. I hate like they use like very like cheap like computer flash animation, which I really hate the look of it.
Well, it mirrors the animation style from the opening titles, because we never really mentioned it, but that's the opening titles look like that as well. I will say I did appreciate at least that it ended like this idea of like, you know, the orgasm being like a rocket to the moon kind of thing, because they do the whole like it's the poster from that classic movie, Trip to the Moon, I think it's the name of it, the really old French like silent movie, which she has a poster of in her room. She also has posters of all the Universal monster movies in her room. I don't know if you noticed that, but there were several of those. But I at least appreciated the final visual of it. But like I get, the animation's not, it's whatever.
Yeah, like I might just be being a little bit of an animation snob, but because actually I do like animation quite a bit, but like I can feel like that. Yeah, if it was like in the 80s or something, they would have actually had like some nice like hand-drawn looking stuff. It's like just a very like choppy computer stuff that just irks me. But
this is just much cheaper to do, and we're in an era where anyone can just boot up the program and start, at least it's not AI, Tim. Not to get back onto that topic from last episode.
Yes. Thankfully.
Oh dear. So that happens. She seems to kill herself in the tanning bed, and then there's also like a coda scene where her dad and her stepsister are together now. Obviously, the stepmom's dead. So it's almost kind of nice in a weird way that she's left her dad with another daughter. Like, hey, you can replace me for my dad's life, kind of thing. But they're there giving flowers, and they comment that there's other flowers there, implying that the zombie's been, visiting the grave. And yeah, so it shows that they're okay. And then the final scene of the movie, again, it faded to black, so I thought the movie was over. The final scene is that finally the zombie, the creature, is talking because he's reading a poem, and he's sitting on the bench by the lake, and when the camera comes round, we see that she's also lying there dead with the bandages all around her from the burns of being electrocuted, and the final moment of the movie is her eyes opening. So he's reanimated her somehow, and I guess you can maybe read this as like, to go with the coming of age thing, the idea that you kind of are reborn as an adult or something, like by the time you're ready to, like, and some people, like refer to sex as the little death. That's like a French thing. So maybe they're even going with this idea she's reborn after she's had sex for the first time into her new life, whatever it is, or, there's probably more here that I'm not quite grasping, but I do feel like there is some subtext to the movie that is there. So it's not just like a, because I see when we do movies like, oh god, what was it? Totally Killer, right? That was the one I was trying to think of, where it feels like, okay, this movie's not really saying anything. They just had a quirky like time travel idea, and that's all it is.
Sure.
I feel like this is trying to actually say some stuff about growing up and like the idea of like the rage that's inside you as a teenager. Like, I think there's actually some stuff there. So I like I say, I respect this movie well enough. I think it's a decent enough watch, and it's entertaining at times, but I don't ever think it was quite exactly for me, and there's definitely some things that I don't love about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the endings before we
No, it does feel like kind of, I don't know, things do feel like they kind of ramp up like pretty fast. And then I do think it's kind of interesting like what the movie chooses to like show and not show. Yeah, because like, I don't know, sometimes you think you would get maybe more like from her death scene, or a little bit more of her like getting resurrected or something. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I just I think it's kind of interesting. It
does gloss over a lot there. Yeah, you just like, oh, he was able to orchestrate a resurrection like he did like he had for himself. You just kind of have to take that for granted, I guess.
And like, I could be wrong, but like, even I think in the beginning, like when he first shows up at the house, I mean, maybe I missed it or I'm forgetting, but like, I don't think you see like a big scene of him like getting struck by lightning and rising out of the grave or anything. Like, he kind of shows up at the house, right? Like,
well, you see the grave getting struck by lightning, or you see this lightning over the cemetery, but you don't see it. You don't get the classic scene of the hand coming out or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of. I mean, I'm assuming this movie, didn't have like a huge budget or anything, so it probably makes sense that they can't do like a lot of bombastic or special effects scenes or whatever, and even like a lot of the like violence and gore is usually off camera. Like, when we say like, yeah, he chops off the guy's dick, you don't actually see it. Like most of the kills and stuff are.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you did see it, this would be like a hard R rating.
Right.
Because it's a dick.
But yeah, I mean, I just kind of, I mean, I guess the movie is clearly, there's things it wants to show and tell, and other things that it's probably not as concerned of, which is totally fine. But
I do think its tone kind of lends itself to not showing some of this stuff. Like, no, which is not to say you can't have like a black comedy with like absurd gore, because you can, and that can be part of the charm of the movie. This was definitely not going for that, though. This was going a little bit more, the character and the mood than it was the violence itself, even though it was a part of it. The budget according to IMDb is 13 million, which is pretty low. That's compared to other movies, that's tiny these days. So, yeah. I mean, no, like I think I'm glad enough that this exists, and I think there's probably a teenage audience that are really going to latch onto it. I think for, the Zoomers or the Alphas or whoever we're talking about now, like there's probably going to be a lot of people who grew up with this from a relatively early age who are probably going to be quite fond of it. I think for me, I've seen kind of attempts at this type of thing before, and I'm sure there's a perfect version of this that fits my taste more. Maybe it's just the case of like a certain type of direction or a certain sense of humor to go along with it that'll work better for me, but I can respect this for what it is, even though I don't love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fine. Again, it's I think it's a perfectly fine watch. It's I wouldn't say it's something, I mean, obviously it's not in theaters right now, but like, I wouldn't say it was something that like, oh, you would have had, you needed to rush out to the theater to see. Like, it's a perfectly fine thing to stumble across streaming. But yeah, it's also one of those things where, it's not going to make a super huge impression on me. It's not like, oh, well, we have an instant contender for top of the year or anything.
Yeah. And I will say, Kathryn Newton really comes into the character the more she opens up. It feels like it's more her type of role, the more vocal she is able to be, and the more expressive she's able to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that gets better as it goes on as well. So, all right, Timmy, what are you rating Lisa Frankenstein?
I think I'm gonna give it a 6. I think it's a perfectly fine movie. There are parts that I like. There are other parts that are like a little rough or felt like a little forced. Or and again, it just feels like something that's not totally for me, but it doesn't mean that it was a hard watch or that I didn't like to watch it or anything. It's it's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm going to 6 as well. It's very much a diplomatic score, and I think it deserves to be, given the credit of being better than like average or bad, certainly. And I think it's got good qualities, but I'm also not that enthusiastic about it, and I would never really want to watch it again. But at the same time, I wouldn't refuse if I met someone who was like, oh, I love Lisa Frankenstein, please watch it with me. I wouldn't be like, oh no, that's horrible, I can't do that. But I'm never going to just choose to watch it again, I don't think. But yeah, a 6 out of 10. It's the diplomatic score in a lot of ways, but it's where I was feeling. Still though, not bad by any means, and if it sounded interesting, absolutely go check it out because it may be your thing. But that is Lisa Frankenstein. So next week on the show, it's the off week where the patrons get an exclusive episode, and that'll be the winner of the Stephen King vote that they've been voting on throughout the month of April. So they can look forward to that. Next episode back for everyone will be Infested, another new 2024 horror movie. So you can look forward to
hearing
that.
Good things. Looking forward to it.
So yeah, Patreon obviously you get an exclusive episode once a month. The higher tiers have got voting rights and things like that. Plus there's bonus shows for other things we do. Me and David do the Criterion monthly show and Extra Reels where we do some of the worst movies of all time. Those are both monthly. Me and Tim also do Even More Streams, which is like an extra video or two every month where we'll do like a random top 5 or maybe talk about some recent news or trailers or things like that. If there's interesting stuff to talk about that's sort of separate from review, that's where we'll kind of dive into it. But that is the show. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. You can keep watching scary movies. Hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a bunch if you do. But otherwise, keep listening or watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.